I want to know something. What is the documentary called? I'm going to give you a hint. It's not called The Duke and Duchess of Sussex. It's not called Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. It's not called A Princely Story. It's not called British royal family former member Prince Harry. It's not called any of those things. It's called Harry and Meghan. And that is totally intentional. I am not a betting woman, but I can almost guarantee that everyone that knows them personally that was interviewed in the documentary, I'm not talking about historians or anything like that. I'm talking about people that know them. At least Meghan. I don't think anyone refers to him as Prince Harry that's within that friend or family, Doria group. I don't think he's really mentioned as Prince Harry unless other people are speaking about him, journalists, former foundation members, etc. But also this idea that no one uses their titles ever to promote whatever they're doing. They do it all the time. I mean, specifically the royal family with charities, which I do not think is a bad thing. I think it's admirable. I think it's fine. Whatever you need to do to bring attention to a cause, yes, please, by all means. But it's also one of the reasons that working senior royals don't typically work, because when Prince Edward tried to do it, there was a lot of speculation and accusation of him using his title and his access to basically make this production company work that was producing documentaries and things like that. Harry could be stripped of his title tomorrow, and in the decades to follow, people will still be interested in him and his story, no matter if he's called Prince Harry, the Duke of Sussex, or simply Harry.
This is how you know that a lot of the royalists out there, they just think with hatred, not with common sense. And most of the time, they really don't know what they're talking about. Last week, I was a part of a live discussing the British royal family, and I was on the panel. And when I was talking, someone made a comment saying that they can't wait for Prince William to become king so that he can remove the Sussex titles. Okay, let me tell you what happens when he removes the Sussex titles. They are no longer their Royal Highnesses, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, but Harry still has his princely title, so he's still Prince Harry, which makes Meghan Her Royal Highness the Princess Henry. For those of you who didn't know that, now you know. And that doesn't affect their children's titles, because Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet are Prince and Princess due to the fact that they are grandchildren of the monarch through the male line. Let's say William takes it a step further and removes Harry's princely title, then of course he's no longer Prince Harry, and then Meghan is no longer Princess Henry. That does not affect their children, as I explained just before. What does that do for you guys? Let's say William goes that far and takes away those titles. That doesn't change anything. That doesn't change what's happened. That doesn't change the fact that Harry wrote Spare. It doesn't change the fact that they did the Netflix documentary. It doesn't change the fact that Meghan has her brand as ever and is selling jam and wines, right? It doesn't change any of that fact, right? They're going to keep going through life as they already are. All you guys are going to do is push it further and find another reason to hate them.
If you were to be introduced into a room and there was just two people, would you expect your name and your title to be read out? I'm referring to Meghan Markle's Harper's Bazaar interview, and I'll explain what I mean. So in this article, the author, the journalist says, when I enter, the house manager announces Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, even though we appear to be the only two people in the house. What's going on there?
I mean, when I get introduced, I like to be introduced in a much more highfalutin manner to what I am, just like Meghan. I mean, it's quite interesting. That is very telling of how Meghan is and how she sees herself. I mean, she was staying at her friend's brownstone. It was completely empty. This member of staff isn't even someone on her staff. It was just a random member of staff that was in the house at the time. So that tells you a lot about, I guess she must have instructed him or her to say that. It just makes me think that this whole thing is so confected and contrived, and she thinks that she's working the media, but actually she's doing herself a massive disservice by coming across very inauthentic.
Well, this is not even working the media, really. This is her almost in a private, or, it's not in public. She's sitting there with a journalist in a room. She's been introduced as the Duchess of Sussex. This article, in Harper's Bazaar, we'll go into it in a little bit more detail. There's some fascinating aspects in it. But it appears that the title Duchess of Sussex is very important to Meghan.
I think it is very, very important. And I have to say, in the 13 years that I worked in the royal household for the late Queen, I've never, ever seen anything like that before.
Really? That didn't happen when you had the late Queen or Charles?
I mean, for the Queen, if she was having an audience, then the equerry would come in with, say, for example, the Prime Minister, and he would say, Your Majesty, the Prime Minister, that's protocol. She was the monarch, and she was doing head of state business. To have this for the Duchess of Sussex, and clearly she wanted it to happen so much to remind people, yes, I am a member of the royal family. I don't think it's just quite extraordinary. And shows a level of insecurity, would you say?
Totally. I mean, we can see that insecurity even when she sent that letter to Jamie Kern-Lima, the podcast host, with, again, the titles totally sort of misused on a letterhead. I do think that she uses that with every scrap that she can to try and lift herself up status-wise, especially in America where titles mean something different over there, definitely to over here. But I just hope that when William gets in, he strips them of the titles, because I just don't think she's deserving of them, and I think she's abusing them at this point.
Well, there is a theory, concentrating on this use of Duchess of Sussex, and you point out about the letter she sent to Jamie Kern-Lima.
Ancient titles may ensure inherited wealth, but not the respect of the public. If Harry and Meghan weren't the real deal, their endeavours like Invictus Games and With Love Meghan would never have gotten off the ground. Many British royals have made paltry attempts at business moves without anything to show more than a fast buck and a faster fade. Link to full article is in bio.
Squaddies, let me ask you something. If Harry and Meghan are supposedly irrelevant, why are royalists still having a full-blown meltdown over their titles? Seriously. These are the same people telling us Harry and Meghan have left the royal family behind. They don't matter anymore. They're finished. Nobody cares. All right then. Why do you care so much about what they're called? Because every 5 minutes, it's take the titles away. They shouldn't be allowed to use those titles. When William becomes king, he needs to strip them. My goodness, you would think Harry and Meghan are walking around Montecito with a royal emergency button saying, quick, somebody stop us from being the Duke and Duchess. Come on. Harry and Meghan didn't wake up one morning and give themselves these titles. They were given the titles when Harry married Meghan by Queen Elizabeth II, and they remain part of their formal identity. Harry and Meghan stepped away from being working royals. They did not erase their entire history. There's a difference, and this is where I think regular people can see through the nonsense. Imagine leaving a job. You leave the company, you start your own business, you build your own career. Years later, your old colleagues are still sitting around arguing about the job title you had when you worked there. At some point, you're like, mate, I don't even work there anymore. Why are you still talking about my old job? That's Harry and Meghan. They left the working royal system. They're living their lives, they're building projects, they're working with charities and organizations, they're raising their children, they're doing their own thing. And yet the people who claim they want Harry and Meghan completely out of the picture cannot stop bringing them back into the conversation. That's the funny part. The Sussexes supposedly have no relevance, but somehow their titles are important enough to dominate royal commentary again. Make it make sense. And let's be honest about something else. A title doesn't magically turn every single thing Harry and Meghan do into commercializing the monarchy. That's just lazy thinking. Harry and Meghan aren't showing up somewhere and pretending they're carrying out an official palace engagement. They're not standing on the Buckingham Palace balcony. They're not claiming to represent the British government. They're living outside that system and building a life of their own. And sometimes Meghan doesn't even want the fuss. Remember when she appeared on MasterChef Australia and was asked about being called Duchess? She basically said, call me Meghan. But somehow we're supposed to believe this woman is obsessed with forcing her title into everyone's face. Please. At this point, I think the obsession isn't coming from Harry and Meghan. It's coming from the people watching them. Because Harry and Meghan can go to America, mind their business, work on their projects, and enjoy their family. And somehow a royalist somewhere will be sitting there thinking, but what about their titles? Brother, please go outside. Touch some grass. There are people worrying about rent, food prices, mortgages, jobs, and keeping their families afloat. And you're angry because a man is still called the Duke of Sussex? Come on now. And that's why I think the title argument tells us far more about the people attacking Harry and Meghan than it does about Harry and Meghan themselves. Because if you genuinely believe the Sussexes are irrelevant, you wouldn't need to keep demanding that their titles be taken away. You'd simply ignore them. But they can't. And that, Squaddies, is the irony. Harry and Meghan walked away from the palace, but apparently the palace conversation still can't walk away from Harry and Meghan. Now, Squaddies, this is where the royalist argument starts getting really shaky. Because every time Harry and Meghan do something outside the palace, here they come. They're using their royal titles commercially. Okay, show us exactly what you're talking about. Because apparently, according to some royalists, the moment Harry and Meghan are associated with the words Duke and Duchess of Sussex, everything they touch becomes some giant royal money-making scheme. Meghan works on a lifestyle project, commercializing the title. Harry supports Invictus, commercializing the title. They attend an event, they're exploiting the monarchy. Harry and Meghan breathe oxygen, royal title scandal. Come on now. Let's bring this back down to earth. Harry and Meghan are not pretending they're working royals. They're not turning up at a school saying, "Hello everybody, we're here on behalf of the palace." They're not sitting in Buckingham Palace deciding who's getting the next royal engagement. They're not appearing on the balcony. They're not asking British taxpayers to fund their working schedule. They stepped away. They built another life. That's the whole point. And here's where I think regular people can see the difference. If you have a professional title, qualification, family name, or reputation that you've legitimately earned or been given, having that title doesn't mean everything you do afterwards belongs to the organization you left. Imagine your old boss saying, "You worked here for 10 years, so we're going to monitor every job you ever do from now on." You'd say, "Mate, I left." That's essentially the energy I'm getting from some of these attacks. Harry and Meghan have moved on, but certain people haven't. And let's talk about Meghan specifically, because if this woman was supposedly obsessed with pushing her Duchess title everywhere she goes, why did she tell the MasterChef Australia team to call her Meghan? That's not exactly giving, "Please make sure everyone knows I'm a Duchess." Quite the opposite. She was there as Meghan. She participated in the show. She cooked. She had fun. She interacted with people. And suddenly the Royalist Brigade wants to turn the whole thing into a constitutional emergency. Please, this is what happens when you start looking for a scandal before you've actually found one. You see the word Duchess and immediately start screaming, commercial exploitation. But where's the actual proof? Where's the evidence that Harry and Meghan are falsely presenting themselves as official working representatives of the royal family? Because simply having a title isn't the same thing as claiming you're carrying out royal duties. Those are two completely different things. And I think this is where the whole argument falls apart for me. Harry and Meghan are allowed to have careers. They're allowed to make money. They're allowed to work with organizations. They're allowed to produce television. They're allowed to attend events. They're allowed to build businesses and partnerships. Leaving the palace doesn't mean leaving your entire identity at the front gate. And frankly, I think some people want Harry and Meghan to live under a bizarre set of rules where they're successful enough to be criticized, but never successful enough to actually operate independently. That's the trap. If they succeed, the critics say they're exploiting their titles. If they disappear, people say they're irrelevant. If they appear somewhere, suddenly they're desperate for attention. So what exactly are Harry and Meghan supposed to do? Sit in a room in Montecito staring at the wall? "Sorry, Meghan, we can't work today. Someone on Twitter might accuse us of using the Duchess title." Come on now. Harry and Meghan chose a different path. They walked away from being working royals. They didn't walk away from being Harry and Meghan. And they certainly don't need permission from the palace or the Royalist commentariat to build a successful life outside that institution. That's the part that really bothers them, isn't it? Harry and Meghan left the system, and they still found a way to shine without it. Nah, Squaddies, this whole William will strip Harry and Meghan of their titles thing is getting ridiculous. You hear people talking like William is waiting for the crown so he can finally hit the revenge button. Don't worry, once William is king, Harry's title is gone. Hold on, is that really the big priority for a future king? Forget the cost of living, forget housing, forget homelessness, forget keeping the monarchy relevant. Quick, where's Harry's paperwork? Because let's be honest, stripping Harry and Meghan's titles isn't going to make anyone's rent cheaper. It won't put food on the table. It won't solve a single problem ordinary people are facing. So I celebrate it. That's not leadership. That's a family feud dressed up as royal business. Harry is William's brother. Meghan is his sister-in-law. But surely a future king should have bigger priorities than figuring out how to punish his younger brother. And here's the funniest part. The same people screaming that Harry and Meghan are irrelevant are desperately waiting for William to do something about them. If they're really irrelevant, leave them alone. Let Harry be Harry, let Meghan be Meghan. And when William becomes king, judge him by something that actually matters. How well does he serve the people? Because a crown should make a leader look bigger, not make a family feud look bigger. And Squaddies, let's flip this whole argument around. After all this shouting about titles, I have one simple question. If Harry and Meghan need the monarchy so badly, why are they doing just fine without it? Think about it. They left the working royal system, no palace organising their schedule, no royal diary, no royal press machine, no balcony appearances. They left and then they built. They moved to America, created their own home, worked on projects, built partnerships, supported causes, and developed their own international profile. And years later, we're still talking about them, their titles, their children, their projects, their home, their travels, their relationship with the royal family. At some point, you've got to laugh. Harry and Meghan are irrelevant. Okay then, stop talking about them, stop writing about them, stop making videos about them, stop obsessing over their titles, because you can't spend all day saying nobody cares about Harry and Meghan while making Harry and Meghan the subject of your entire day. That's not convincing. And that's why this title obsession is so revealing. Some people seem to think Harry and Meghan were supposed to leave the palace and disappear, but they didn't. They built their own life. They didn't need the balcony. They didn't need William beside them. They didn't need the palace press office. They didn't need royal approval. They created their own spotlight. And that's the irony. The people who insist Harry and Meghan need the palace to matter can't seem to stop talking about them after they left. Harry and Meghan left the building, but somehow the building never stopped talking about them. And that, Squaddies, is why I love this story. Thanks for watching, Squaddies, and remember, if Harry and Meghan are supposedly irrelevant, somebody needs to tell the Royalists to stop talking about them every 5 minutes. They clearly didn't get the memo. I am your host, Miles. Like, share, subscribe, join the membership, and I'll catch you in the next episode. God bless you all, and have a blessed week ahead.